Please be seated. Thank you, Ms. Harzadon. I suppose we should swear the witness in. Would you like to affirm or swear an oath?
Affirm, thank you.
Thank you. If you could just repeat after me. I, Elizabeth Harzadon.
Actually, I should just clarify, my legal name is Morris.
As the documents are, which name would you prefer to go under for the purpose of
Harzadon is completely fine. Harzadon is completely fine.
Right. I, Elizabeth Harzadon.
I, Elizabeth Harzadon.
Sincerely declare and affirm.
Sincerely declare and affirm.
That the evidence that I give to this commission.
That the evidence I give to this commission.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Harzadon, you have prepared a report for this commission at its request, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And this should now appear on your screen, PCRC.0021.001.001. I'll ask you to confirm that is your report by looking at the first page and scrolling through to the conclusion at page 0030.
Yes, that looks like my report.
Your qualifications are set out at page 0004. Section 1.2, are they correctly set out there?
Yes, that's correct.
And the instructions that you were provided with by this commission are set out in Annexure 3 to your report commencing at page 0035.
Yes, that's correct.
0035, please, operator. And do you say that you have prepared your report in accordance with those instructions?
Yes, I have.
To the extent that your report contains statements of fact from your own knowledge, are those statements true?
Yes, they are true.
To the extent that your report contains your opinions, are those opinions honestly and reasonably held by you?
Yes, they are.
I tender that report, Commissioners.
The report dated October 2021 of Elizabeth Harzadon and with the identifier number PCRC.0021.001.0001 will be admitted into evidence as an exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, Ms. Harzadon, you also prepared a report at the request of the Victorian Royal Commission into the casino operator and a licence which was tendered in that inquiry.
Yes, I did.
I'll show you a document on the screen, CRW.709.162.0287, and ask you to confirm that's your report. We'll show you the first page and the conclusion at page 0202.
Yes, that looks like my report.
Page 0202.
Yes, that's my report.
Thank you. And the key questions you were asked by the Victorian Royal Commission to consider are set out at section 1.3 at page 0181.
Yes, that's right.
And does the body of your report comprise your attempt to answer those questions?
Yes, it does.
To the extent that this report contains statements of fact from your own knowledge, are those statements true?
Yes, they are.
To the extent that the report contains your opinions, are those opinions honestly and reasonably held by you?
Yes, that's correct.
I tender that report, Commissioners.
The report entitled Cultural Change at Crown Melbourne, Expert Opinion by Elizabeth Harzadon, dated June 2021 and bearing the identifier number COM.0007.0001.0178 is admitted into evidence as an exhibit.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, coming back to what I'll call the Perth report, report you've prepared for this Royal Commission, that's PCRC.0021.001.001. You were asked in terms by this Commission to set out any comments and observations you might have on the Deloitte Culture Review, which I'll just identify for the purposes of the transcript CRW.701.004.9441. And by reference to your executive summary at page 0003 of your report, in the second paragraph, you agreed with the key findings in the Deloitte report. However, you go on to say that the Deloitte approach does not support clear identification of cultural barriers to Crown's conduct and risk management. And you have then gone on in your report to focus on Crown's conduct and risk management. Why is that?
Do you mean why did I take that approach in the report?
Yes, and why did you have that focus?
Well, in reference, I suppose, to the Perth Casino Royal Commission's terms of reference, I felt that it would be helpful to focus more specifically on how the culture of Crown supports effective management of risk and conduct. Whereas I think the Deloitte report was more focused on trying to highlight whether or not Crown's values, espoused values, were aligned to the lived experience that they observed in their review. So given the slightly different criteria that I was applying, I thought it would be helpful for the Commission to understand the effect of culture on risk and conduct outcomes.
Thank you. Now, I just wanted to ask you about some terminology in your report. At page 0009, for example, you refer in your table, right-hand column, second row, you use this expression of senior leaders. Who do you define as a senior leader for the purposes of your report?
The CEO and their direct reports and the board.
Thank you. And is that to be equated with the phrase senior management that we see you to refer to, we see you using that expression later in the report?
Yes, senior management or senior leaders, I would use those interchangeably.
Right. And then at page 0030, if we look at subparagraph 5 there, pop that out, please. You refer in the third line to middle management and supervisor levels. How do you define middle management for the purposes of this report?
Middle management would be the maybe top 2 levels of management within a property, and the supervisor level would be the direct supervisors of frontline staff.
Thank you. Separately, can I take you to the bottom of page 0015? The conclusion in section 4.3 about the assessments of culture as a driver of conduct and risk, you identify indications of serious deficiencies across all dimensions of Crown's risk culture framework. I assume when you say their risk culture framework in the second line, you're talking about Crown?
I'm sorry, could you just...
First
repeat?
sentence. At the end of the first sentence, you use the expression their risk culture framework.
I was actually referring to the Deloitte risk culture framework, which I used to analyse the results or interpret the results.
I see. And so the serious deficiencies, though, are serious deficiencies in the Crown culture?
In the Crown culture, that's right.
By reference to a Deloitte risk culture framework?
That's correct.
Right. In the third sentence, you say that your observation suggests a complete transformation is required, and you then go on to explain what that would involve. Can you explain to the Commissioners, please, in practical terms, what you mean by removing formal and informal mechanisms that currently reinforce existing behavioural norms and replacing them?
So maybe it would be helpful to explain what formal and informal mechanisms are. So formal mechanisms are documented policies, procedures, systems, processes that provide guidance to staff about what they're expected to do in their work. And they can include things like performance management mechanisms or processes, training, codes of conduct, the way they're paid or what their bonuses are comprised of. So these are all things to do with the formal environment. The informal mechanisms are related to undocumented expectations or interpretations of the environment. They might be what would sometimes be referred to as water cooler conversations, the types of things that people discuss amongst themselves about the way leaders are behaving or what that might imply, or historical events that have occurred and what people take away from those, what they interpret them to mean. So the formal and the informal parts of the environment are what provide guidance implicit guidance to staff about the way things are done. So what I mean by a complete transformation is that currently the formal and informal environment together are reinforcing a certain set of behavioural norms that I would conclude have contributed to the current risk and conduct outcomes that we see at Crown. And in order to create different behavioural norms to support different outcomes, then the existing formal and informal mechanisms that are reinforcing the current outcomes need to be replaced with ones that might or will drive different outcomes. So potentially, if the performance management processes, as an example of a formal mechanism, are reinforcing the types of behaviours that are driving the poor outcomes that we've seen, then they would need to be replaced, as would all the other formal mechanisms and as well as the informal mechanisms. So it's quite a wholesale change.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Commissioners.
Thank you. Are there any, excuse me, are there any applications?
Yes.
Mr. Garris.
Thank you. Ms Azardin, my surname is Garris and I act for the Crown Companies.
I'll just rise to explain that it's pronounced Arzadon, sorry. Mr. Garris has got me saying it. Arzadon.
Thank you.
I just have some questions really by way of clarification of your October report. And I'll just work through those. So your instructions were to provide comments and observations on the Deloitte reports, and for that purpose, I just want to confirm you received obviously the two reports, the culture state, the current state culture report, final report, and the survey results demographic detail report, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And you also received some source material, and I'll come back to that source material. And for the purpose of your report, you haven't considered the change roadmap or related materials subsequent to the Deloitte reports and the survey data, is that correct?
No, I didn't.
And I'm correct in saying that you did not gather any material independently of the material gathered by Deloitte?
No, I did not.
You didn't speak with anyone at Crown?
No, I did not.
And you didn't speak to anyone at Deloitte?
No, I did not.
Can I just ask what the date of your report was, when it was concluded?
To be honest, I can't remember the exact date that it was concluded. It's October 2021, but I don't have the exact date.
Now, I'm also correct in saying your report is not a culture review and doesn't purport to be a culture review, does it?
No, it's not.
In order to undertake a culture review, it would be necessary to interview staff and key stakeholders?
If I was going to do that, yes, I would have to do that.
Thank you. And so we have your report up on screen. Can we just move forward to page 35, please? I'm just going to take you to the instructions. So this was the initial instruction you received on 23 September. If we could just confirm, with that instruction you're provided with the Deloitte report, the culture review, correct?
That's correct.
But you weren't provided with any source material at that stage?
At that stage, no. I think the very first email came through with the report.
Thank you. And if we could go then to page 38. So page 38, you'll see that it's the extract of your instruction on 29 September, And with that letter, it appears you're provided with the survey results demographic detail report itself,
That's correct.
but you weren't provided with the actual source data at that stage.
At that stage, no, I don't think so.
Thank you. And then can we move forward to page 39, please? And so this is the instruction on 1 October, and it appears that it's at that stage that you're provided with source data, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And if we go over to page 40, there is annexure 4, which lists the material that was provided to you. Now, if we go back to page 33, please. So annexure 1 is, as I understand it, the material that you actually reviewed for the purposes of the report.
That's correct.
But that's not the entirety of the material actually provided to you as listed in annexure 4, is that right?
No, that's correct.
And how did you determine what material you would review?
So there are probably two things to consider. One is that the survey results, in my opinion, are a very robust source of data because the survey was sent to all staff. And so they are, in a sense, a piece of data that relates to a large majority of employees in the organisation, and so therefore provides their perspective. It's a population measure as opposed to a sample. So, so the survey I felt was a very robust source of information that I relied a lot on. The second thing then in considering what other qualitative information to triangulate the survey data with, Deloitte had prepared some summaries of their focus groups. And if I just refresh my memory in the appendix of the annexure of my report, I did detail which of the materials I actually reviewed. I'm just going to turn to that. There was a summary of the Sydney focus groups, the Perth focus groups, the Melbourne focus groups, and there were also summaries of the interviews with leaders in Sydney, Perth and Melbourne. I reviewed, and I suppose I didn't review, I looked through some of the transcripts that were that were provided to me, and my conclusion was that they seemed consistent with the summaries that had been prepared by Deloitte. And so I relied then on the summaries that Deloitte had prepared to as a reasonable reflection of what the underlying focus group and interviews were. And I also, as you'll see, went through, though, in more detail into the focus group hypothesis scoring, which was an exercise that they'd done in the focus groups themselves. And I looked at those in detail as well. So my conclusion was that the summaries were a good reflection and I could rely on those for the qualitative elements to triangulate the survey data with. So
if we just have a look at those, can we bring up document DTT.010.0007.0119? So is this one of the documents you're referring to?
Yeah, that's the focus group exercise.
And that's the extent of the document, is it?
I think most of them had one photograph of the, maybe some of them might have had two. They just depended on how they took the photographs.
I see, and so the photographs, and I have a couple others here, it seems that in each instance there's 6 of these pages with a question and the blue dots or yellow dots allocated to particular answers.
That's correct, yes.
And do you know if you're provided with the entire data set that Deloitte had gathered?
I don't know if I was provided with the entire data set, but there was a lot of data. So it seemed quite comprehensive, but I don't know if it was the complete and full thing.
And did you ask for the entire data set?
I don't believe I specifically asked for the entire data set. I have to say my assumption was that it was the entire data set.
Were you given a list that was described as the entire data set?
I can't honestly remember if that was described to me that way.
Thank you. I just have then some particular questions about page 18 of Ms. Azadon's report, please, if we can go back to that. And can we go forward to page 18, please? Now, at page 18 and onwards, there are many instances where you've identified and extracted percentage figures in relation to the survey data from Perth. And you've also referred to examples. Is it the case that you're suggesting those examples are quotes provided by Perth staff?
I wasn't able to identify where the survey comments came from, actually. But I note early in my report that when I looked at the survey data, that there were not what appeared to be large differences. There were not large differences between Perth and the overall results. So that's why I felt it was reasonable to give survey comments as illustrations of findings that I was reporting. But I did not know whether they were from Perth or not, because I wasn't able to tell that.
I see. Do you know how many individual comments were actually received by Deloitte for the purposes of the work they did?
Well, there can be different ways of interpreting whether a comment is valid or not. There were some comments that had a dot in the cell, but it was somewhere it was thousands, is my understanding.
Do you know how many thousand?
I don't off the top of my head have the number.
And did you receive those individual comments as part of the data set?
There were comments from in the survey, from free text questions that were asked in the survey. There were also, of course, comments made in focus groups and comments made in interviews. So I did receive a number of those.
And were you assisted in the preparation of your report by anyone?
No, I was not. I completed the report on my own.
And I think you indicated before you don't recall exactly when your report was concluded, but it was sometime in October, is that right?
Yes, it was.
And the source data you received, according to the answers you gave before, was on the 1st of October, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garris. Are there any other? Yes, Michelle.
Ms. Azadon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My name is Ms. Young and I appear for the CPH parties. Can I take you back to the report that you prepared for the Victorian Royal Commission, which was tendered just now by Ms. Cahill SC? That's thank you on the screen for the transcript com.0007.0001.0178. Ms. Azadon, this report was the subject of oral evidence before Commissioner Finkelstein. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And in that report at page 0202, you make a statement about Mr. Packer's leadership style.
Yes.
Do you
I
see
remember
that?
Yes.
And in your oral evidence to Commissioner Finkelstein, you clarified that this statement about Mr. Packer was an assumption based upon what you had drawn from paragraphs of the Bergen report. Is that correct?
Bergen report? Yes, I believe so.
Yes. And you agreed in your evidence to Commissioner Finkelstein that you have never met or spoken to Mr. Packer?
No, that's correct.
And you personally didn't speak to anyone at Crown or formerly of Crown who had dealt with Mr Packer?
No, I have not spoken to anyone at Crown.
And you do not know personally whether or not he was domineering in his leadership style?
No, I do. I was simply using the materials I've been provided for my report.
Do you agree that your report to Commissioner Finkelstein should be read with your oral evidence given to him?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you agree that your report to Commissioner Finkelstein should be read with the oral evidence that you gave him?
Yes, I suppose so.
Commissioners also seek then to tender the transcript from the Victorian Royal Commission of Ms Arzadon's evidence, which appears at com.004.990.5657, in particular pages 5732 to 5789, which comprise Ms Arzadon's oral evidence.
Could you repeat the identifier number, please?
Yes, Commissioner, com.004.009.5657.
An extract from the transcript of the proceedings of the Victorian Royal Commission with the identifier number com.0004.0009.5657, and in particular pages 5732 to 5789 of the transcript, admitted into evidence as an exhibit.
If the Commission pleases.
Thank you. Are there any other applications? Ms Arzadon, I've only got one question for you. In your report, we may not need to bring this up because I'm sure you can recite this by heart, but it's at point 0005. It's the definition of culture. You use which you say is just one that it's widely accepted, etc., etc. Culture is defined as systemically reinforced behavioural norms and mindsets that help or hinder various business outcomes. That's your working definition of culture.
That's correct.
In the Deloitte's current state culture, that's CRW.701.004.9447, and it's at 9442 at 9447. Do you see in the first paragraph under methodology, there's a definition that that Deloitte's have used of culture. Could you just read that for me?
Culture refers to the
No,
sustained...
just read it. Just read it to yourself, just to remind.
Sorry.
And it's a simple question. Is there any significant or material difference between your definition of culture and that definition of culture that might impact on an assessment of the report?
No, I don't think there is a material difference.
All right.
They've used more words, but I think it essentially says the same thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you wish to re-examine? Was there a summons?
I'm not sure.
Ms. Arzadon, were you served with a summons to appear, or was it an informal arrangement?
I don't know. I wasn't served with a summons. I
think I'm being told there was no summons.
No summons? All right. Well, I don't have to then. We don't have to discharge the summons. Thank you very much indeed for making yourself available to us and for your evidence, which has been informative. Thank you very much. And you have our gratitude, and you're now free to go. And we will adjourn to a date and time to be fixed.
All rise.